So welcome to another session of Regen Civics. We'll do a quick round of just 20 seconds who you are. If you've already done an intro, if you haven't done an intro up until now, take about 3 minutes, explain a little bit of the work you're doing and how you plug into the greater, regenerative renaissance and what we're doing here. So that's generally how we start these calls. And then this call particularly is focused on selecting those 12 projects. So what is our criteria? What are we going to go through? What are we actually looking for, et cetera? And that will be hosted and facilitated by Sydney. So I will just hold the space for these intros. I'll pass it to Sydney and then she'll take it from there. Does anyone else have anything to add to the agenda today or any comments on the facilitation process? Oh, and with that, we can get going. Caitlin, if I could put you on the spot again, you were starting off your introduction, so I can send it back your way and we'd love to hear from you.
Sure, thanks. It's just so excited to jump in and meet everyone. But yeah, my name is Caitlin. It's lovely to be here. So my background is in policy. I worked for a couple of different governments for a few years, but more interested in the community governance and democracy access side. So I worked as a community organizer where I was living at the time for a couple of years, went to school from Germany for a little while, and I'm now working pretty deeply on governance structures and values formation within Web3 ecosystems. So I do work for a Web3 foundation right now, designing their governance structure. But I'm really interested in alternative and regenerative models, which is how I originally got connected to the group. And I'm really excited to contribute what I can, but also meet and learn from you all and learn a little bit more about what you're trying to achieve and how you're going about it. So thanks for welcoming me.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I forgot to tell you the protocol was just to pass it to somebody else when you're done checking in.
How about John Love?
Okay, thanks. I'm calling in from Canada, just north of Toronto, but I'm also connected with ecovillage. I'm not an ecovillage, a regenerative farm in Ecuador called Finca Sagrada near Vilcabamba, and I hope Walter Mora, the founder of that, will be joining us today. He knows about the call and has the link, and hopefully he'll have enough internet to get through. And I'll pass it to Sid.
Hey, John, love your last name always, and good to see everyone here. I'm really excited to facilitate with help from Brandon. I've also had several discussions with others like Jamaica, so just want to say thanks to everyone who's been a part of this process. And I'm representing Permatours as well, which received a grant from Seeds to do permaculture action and sustainable construction. And I'll pass it to Brandon.
Hello, everyone. Here in Bali, currently right now, and with this Regen Civics Alliance, we're basically bringing forth a lot of the different types of regenerative practices, development, what does it take to do real estate in these types of realms. So we like to assist and help out creating some of these types of scorecards on what type of projects that the collective wants to bring forward. So look forward to helping out in that process, and I will pass it to Neil.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm Neil, I'm in DC, and I really here to help focus on creating models that can be replicated widely around the world through this program, and I'm really excited about applying the DHL platform to creating a local currency and a local model that can be used by everybody. Who has not gone? Nadine, did you go?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you all for showing up. It's beautiful to be in this honored space here together with you all. It's yeah, it's a pleasure. And I'm representing here Dear Wise Earth with a project in Yucatan, Mexico here. It's a living lab we're setting up together. And we get, so this is a building in the nature reserve area in the Yucatan area or state. We got it from the Mexican government to regenerate it, to restore that building and regenerate it. And then we're going to set up a living lab there, a research hub for the regenerative movement, and many other amazing things are planned there. So it's beautiful. I pass to Mark.
name's Mark Angelo, involved in and having founded a project called the Valhalla Movement or Valhalla Farms, just outside of downtown Montreal, 20 minutes away, 88-acre project, going into our 10th season with like an insane amount of things going on. I mean, today we just launched real world asset garlic row NFTs, and we put 40 of them onto the the market, and I just sold 36. There's like, I'm getting messages right now in 5 seconds. So it's just disrupting, doing amazing stuff, surrounded by amazing people, and yeah, just been following this story for a long time. So bad time. And I will pass it off to, did Lucian go?
Not yet. Thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone from Ibiza. I'm here representing United Planet, and we have created essentially a decentralized society all around stepping into the future together to develop narratives and then reverse engineer solutions from those narratives, from being in the future we wish to create. And I've also been wearing a hat representing numerous land-based projects here in Ibiza. And when I've been sharing CanJoy, I'm really happy to share that we just closed €6 million for that project. So it's going ahead. We've got a 40-year lease on a massive transformative education project here. So very excited about that. And I am going to pass it to Stephen. I don't think you've gone yet, right?
No, it's the first time I've introduced myself to
Welcome.
this group. I know many of you. Thank you, Lucy. I know you too. I've visited you in San Francisco. Yeah, so quick background. I have a PhD in international business and management, and I've been a strategic alliance specialist in that world for many years, doing it all over the world. I've worked in 108 countries so far. I was in the Peace Corps in Brazil for 2 years. Lived all over the world, but I'm right now very active in Seeds in Haifa. I'm on the Seeds Commons Council, and I'm on the Strategic Anchor Council at Haifa. And I'm also very involved in Vilcabamba. I've been there for quite a long time, helping Susan Davis co-created a nonprofit foundation called Kinship Earth, and also another nonprofit called the Global Transformation Corps, kind of like the Peace Corps for the world. And I'm very happy to be here and support the work of everyone here. And also just want to say, I just entered the Finca Sagrada Farm Vilcabamba project into your application process for one of the 12 villages. It's in there today, should be there today. And I think
I already entered it, Stephen. So we duplicated, but we got it in there twice.
Oh, great. Okay. Anyway, as you can see, John's very familiar with it as well. And he was living down there too for a while, him and his wife, Sacha. I think one of the primary objectives when you select the project is how strong is the community support on the ground?
I'm just going to be a strict facilitator because we all love that. Yeah. Beautiful check, but we'll get into all the things once everyone's had a check.
Okay.
So maybe if you want to pass it, and then we'll get into
let's see, who hasn't gone yet? Let's see. Kelly and Joe, have you gone? No.
Not yet. Go first. You can go first.
All right. Hey guys, I'm Joe McVean. I was on the last call. But close friends with a couple of you, Mark and William, or Will, I know him as Will. But yeah, I've been in the regenerative movement here, I guess, for about 3 years, kicked off at Mark's Freedom Culture Mastermind in Southeastern Costa Rica. Totally blew my mind open. Kelly's been watering my brain with how we can change the world by building in a new way instead of just me being stuck in my sales and marketing and investor relations, masculine brain. If we actually use it towards making the world a better place and how we live in the built environment in a totally different, more beautiful, permaculture driven way, everything could be better. So yeah, that's kind of what I do is business development when it comes to regenerative development projects, consulting and setting up a consulting agency as we speak for the building out of pro formas for these development projects, as well as project management and business development consulting. We've also got connections deep into the TV business. We can distribute any show and content that is created on 4 existing television channels pretty far and wide. And the list goes on. I just support however I'm needed to make things funded and visible. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm Kelly, and I do regenerative development. We have a company called New Earth Development, and yeah, like Joe was saying, we provide project management and financial and consulting services for regenerative villages. I have a background in finance and real estate, and we're also doing our own development project here in Costa Rica called Abundancia. So that's going to be one of the 12, or potentially, if it gets chosen. And yeah, there's many more about that, but I'll just keep it short and sweet. Next person, Evan, have you gone yet?
No, I haven't. Hello, my name is Evan. This is the first time being on a call. I've watched a couple of you guys' calls before. I'm a little new to the space and catching up with Seeds and HAPA and Regen Civics. So I'm one of the trustees for Tioga Land Trust with Tioga Community, one of the applicants for the first cohort. I'm excited to be here. I specialize in energy work. I'm a Reiki master, studied optical engineering and audio engineering. I'm also a DJ of electronic music, into learning more about communities and building intentional communities and also a network of communities. Right now we're located here in the Northeast of America, and I do have permanent goals of ending up in the tropics one day, as I've manifested since 2016. I went to Earthship Academy and learned a little bit about building the Earthship way, and I'm excited to keep progressing with new skills and being a part of this, and also integrating cryptocurrency in the blockchain. So I'm happy to be here. Sorry I'm a little bit late. My video is not the best on this laptop. Who hasn't gone yet? We will pass it.
Sahana.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Sahana. I'm a DAO tool builder and operator. I basically help DAOs in the sustainable development and conservation sectors, so helping with climate change or ocean conservation and so on with DAO operations and processes, just kind of help serve as a helper and resource as much as possible. And previously my background was more in computer science, data analytics, so if any of that could be helpful too, happy to jump in. I'll keep it short also. So I think Tucker might not have gone if you're online.
Hello, I am on the beach and it's really windy, so I'm going to keep it quick. My name is Tucker. I'm also with the Tioga Land Trust with Evan, and I've been focusing on integrating cryptocurrencies and blockchains into a land trust to tokenize capital interest. So that's what I'm really jazzed about. I'll pass it on to whoever's next. I'm not sure who it is.
Thanks, Tucker. Maybe Peter, have you gone? And then if anyone else has yet to go, just put your hand up so I can call on you and we can get started. So I'll go Will next.
Yeah. My name's Peter, and like Stephen, my background's quite wide and I really don't know what to mention and what not, but I've worked as a personal coach, I've worked as a security chauffeur, I've kind of worked at pretty much everything except for milkman. That's my future ambition. I've lived in lots of different places, done lots of different things with lots of different people, and but the kind of ecological aspect of the problems that we all share are the ones that interest me the most, as well as the consciousness aspect. And so I think these are the two main things I find are really interesting to kind of attack and, or not attack, but to address. And so that's why eco-villages, communities, and what now regenerative villages have been an interest of mine for many years. And I'm relatively new coming back into this space because I kind of looked away for a few years, and I look back and it's all happening, and that was really great news. And so anyway, now I'm here representing La Tierra, which is a project in Costa Rica, which well, will be built over the next 7 years-ish. It's 175 hectares of coastal property on Nicoya Peninsula, and it hopes to be an example of all things regenerative, whether it's, governance using cryptos, which is well beyond me, agriculture, the ecology, the buildings, of course, all of it. So it's a really exciting project. And I'm really excited to be part of it. And I'm really excited to meet you all and be on this call. And I think, okay, who's not been? I think that's everyone.
I'll send it to Will and then.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name's Will. I'm here representing the Universe Spiritual Ministry, a conscious and regenerative community internationally, with a land-based project called Starseed Village in Guatemala, Chicacao, as one of the potential villages for this 12 that we're looking to shepherd in the cohort. And my focus that's relevant to this conversation is agroforestry, permaculture, and village building in general, eco bamboo, tree houses, NFTs, tokenization, alternative governance structures. I'm an early stage investor in HAPA and a citizen of Seeds. So very happy to be part of this alliance. And yeah, excited for the call. So thank you.
Thanks, Will. I'll take it back. Quick check-in. I'm also an early stage investor in HAPA and citizen of Seeds. So I love saying that. I'm going to use my check-in to actually set the stage for this next part of the conversation. So I'll share this real quick. This is what, in a nutshell, at least one perspective of it, Regen Civics is attempting to do, is experiment with alternatives in all of these systems. So it's really, if we're designing civilization for 21st century humanity, what do we need to build? And just like everything we celebrate in culture today, we really celebrate going back down to first principles and starting over and re-engineering it. It's what Tesla did with the new vehicles and built the best electric car, because they said, all right, first principles starting from the ground up, what does it look like? So that's what we're attempting to do in small isolated projects and what we're calling regenerative civics projects across the globe. So we want to pick 12 projects that are best helping us understand how to shift from the exploitative and degenerative economies that we have today into cooperative and regenerative economies. And there's a couple different ways of exploring this, one being ecovillages themselves, which is really powerful, because that kind of is the holistic context. It's a group of people coming together to say, hey, we want to meet our needs differently and regeneratively and locally. So maybe it makes sense to grow our food locally rather than try to make a product and sell it so you can buy food halfway across the globe. You know, maybe they actually list their needs of love and connection and purpose. And then they can go about strategizing how to best, meet those as a group. Right now, like our economic systems say, we're going to maybe look at Maslow's bottom part of the hierarchy of needs. Maybe we're going to talk about the base of food, shelter, clothing, etc. But we're not even going to talk about the need for purpose and the need for understanding ourselves more coherently and completely. So then our economic system doesn't afford things like rites of passage ceremonies. It doesn't build that into it. It says we're going to work 9 to 5 all year round because we don't value, personal growth. We don't value, that personal transformation process. So we're not going to carve out 3 months every year for people to have that. But if we're designing new economic systems from the ground up, maybe we do design those things. So when we're going about the process of selecting what 12 projects we want to really highlight, if we're trying to get the widest lens of experimentation so that we can learn the most, because every year we go around and pick 12 new projects, we're cycling through that learning process. So we're going to learn through 1 year, and then in the winter season, which if you haven't known about that, go back and watch the stuff on seasons. But the winter season is where we look back on the year and we do decentralized governance and we build the new structures for the next year. So every time we go through a year of experimentation, we're going to learn what works, what doesn't work. Right? And then we're going to use that winter season to design new patterns so that in spring, when we go back to crowd pooling and bringing in new projects and selecting another 12, we're going to have a more improved model every year to grow off of. So it's a very practical process for doing this really audacious vision of, whole systems change, right? So anyway, so that's me setting my opinion on what I believe we're trying to accomplish here and giving context for some of you who are new. And I'm going to pass it over to Sydney, who's going to guide us through the rest of today's call. And then I'll just take off my facilitator hat, pass it over to her, and become a participant.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Ricky, for setting the stage. I shared in the chat a document that I created in support with some individuals here as far as how we want to go about this process, and it's very much open to feedback and input. So I'm going to put it up on the screen here so you can get a sense for what I'm thinking. Just to give a little bit more of a background on where we are right now as far as our process, we're self-organizing and we're figuring out ways to participate, identifying the rings of involvement and the champions to steward the different components and areas where we're going to be adding value. We're in the process of establishing our ethic and our frame and our value. And Jamaica did an amazing job last call, taking us through an ideation process and a Miro board to get a lot of that down. And as far as the value that we're delivering, like Reiki just mentioned, DAO setup and consulting, using HIFA's DAO tools, fundraising together with NFTs, and supporting with attracting and facilitating hands-on support this summer, which is going to be really exciting to meet so many of these amazing humans in person. And if you're new to the Alliance and we are going to be evaluating and making major decisions today, definitely want to welcome you to be here to witness and to provide input and ask questions and to plus up projects. But if you're not yet familiar with all the context and the background or the projects themselves, you don't need to vote. You can just hold space and witness as a part of the process here. And then for those of you who are watching this recording later and you have been involved and you want to vote, we're going to try to set that up on Discord so that we can collect some votes here and then some votes later so that other people who can't make this call can contribute to that process. Right here is just some documentation that we've worked on. The overview comes from Gitbook as well as our Miro session. So you can click this link here to access that documentation. And then we have an Alliance member form, which is intended to collect information from those of you who want to support the projects in the Alliance regardless of whether or not your project was selected. So it's like how you as an individual are going to contribute or how you and your entity or your resource is going to support and add value to these projects. And after we collect that information, we have about 8 responses thus far. We'll get a sense for who wants to really dive in and support and help, again, nurture and steward some of these areas. I think Neil shared this regenerative doc, which is really helpful when we're thinking about, what does regeneration mean? How do we measure it? When we're evaluating these projects, how do we score them for their regeneration? So I found that doc helpful. And then again, you can check out the responses to the Alliance form to get a sense for who here has committed to supporting the Alliance. As far as the evaluation, like I shared, I connected with a few individuals here and we talked about this process. It would be pretty cool to get a pitch from each project, a short one because everyone's put a lot of time into their submissions, but just to give the representative of the project a chance to share or to share a pre-recorded video if they can't make it, if they're in Bali or something and it's 12 hours ahead. So I wanted to ask everyone here just a couple of questions as I share these points, like how long should each pitch be? If we're gonna take an hour and 15 minutes to go through X amount of projects, how much time are we gonna take to go over each one? So that would involve a pitch if we wanna do that, giving us all a few minutes to actually look at these submissions and the responses. If we haven't yet, an opportunity for a short Q&A to address any points that are not clear or to bring up any points that don't seem aligned with the Alliance. And then we were talking about scoring these projects to help with our understanding and calculating and comparing them against each other. So as far as what we would score, my thinking is that the overarching categories that we've discussed are regenerative. Is this project regenerative? What is the governance type and status? How crystallized is the idea? How itemized are the funding needs? What is the status of land ownership? Are there any barriers to actually implementing the plans that you're set out to do? How many people can actually live there or visit or attend events? How many people can work together to drive impact at that location? And then how, again, does it align with RCA's value, mission, and criteria that we've worked on through Gitbook and the Miro last call? And then the idea is that after we score each of these categories, we tally up the score, we'd create an average, and then we tally up all the different categories and have one score for each and every project. And I just wanted to make note here that once we look at all these projects, we're going to want to think about the diversification and the spread, the geographical spread, as we've talked a lot about wanting to support a variety of projects that have, different backgrounds and focus areas and ways of implementing. And then the last point really that I have is I know that we want to add value to those projects that are not selected for the first cohort. So how do we do that? And just get your feedback. And then I'll take a pause here so anyone can contribute before we dive into collecting some feedback in the chat.
Okay, so if no one's gonna say anything, I can say something. The first question was, how long would a pitch be? I mean, like a 90-second video would be nice, not too much, because if we're looking at least 12, and then that's just gonna be the door to opening a conversation about them. And I know Reiki previously asked for a 90-second video.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was actually wanting to pause for any questions, and then I was hoping we could all contribute our thoughts for these questions in the chat just to speed up the process. Just want to take a second to make sure that we're all on the same page here before we do this. Nope. All right, cool. William, thank you. All right, does anyone want to share in the chat their feeling about the pitch? All right. Application submissions. How long do we each need to review these submissions? 5 minutes?
So
some of the submissions are quite lengthy.
Just for clarity, Sydney, I'm sorry, I'm confused. I'm confused what you're asking for. Are you asking for us to pitch right now or present the pitch later? Or
No. So as a part of our evaluation process today, these are some of the points that I was thinking would help our process defining, if we're giving someone a chance to share their presentation, how many minutes, 30 seconds, 90 seconds, how long? And then how long will we give everyone to read the submission so that they can get a sense for each project if they haven't yet done so? And then how long do we want to do a Q&A so that people can ask for clarification or address points that aren't necessarily aligned or don't feel aligned? So I was just going to go through each of these so that we can build consensus and then dive into the evaluation process.
Got it. Okay. And the pitching process, will that happen on a call either like later on the next call or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, the plan was to actually make some decisions today if we have time for that. I'm assuming it's going to take a couple of sessions to go through all of these if we want to do it this way. So
yeah, I think
definitely
that was
open for feedback. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I guess if I'm already talking, I might as well offer my feedback. So I think it makes sense if we all can just get a consensus on how the projects will be evaluated on this call right now, since we're already talking about it. And this is a really great start that you got here. And then next call, we'll execute whatever we agree on, which is, I think, a 90-second to 2-minute presentation or video from each person that we just share, and then go to the next one, share, go to the next one, share, go to the next one, and then vote, or vote as we go, either way. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And we can do Q&A in that same call next week.
One thing I would say about that is that the call next week was already being proposed. There's already a proposal for what content will be in next week's call and the week after. So perhaps this, for pitching and presenting, is an entirely separate call to this open one that we have as an alliance. Just an idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, yes, full yes to like finalizing what the process looks like in today's call.
Roger that. Do we have a goal or a deadline on when we'd want to have the 12 identified?
I'll let Reiki share that. I just want to respond quickly to Mark, your note about the council. I think the individuals who have taken the time to fill out the alliance form as far as how they want to support independent of a project makes a lot of sense, to look to those individuals who have expressed interest. And Reiki, if you want to fill us in on this call and the focus.
Sure.
Okay.
There I am. So actually, I want to take a step back and maybe set a little bit more context to what's going on here, because I think we went down a hole. So maybe I can add to this proposal that a set of a process. So one, we have all the projects who want to apply, do the regular application process. Then we can give them a score using the score sheet that you guys set up, which I'm in love with. I think that's a beautiful plan. And then the top, let's say 15 or so, we'll set a cap, projects we invite onto a call. Because one artifact that I think would be really powerful is having like an hour, hour and a half maximum, where it's really quick and high pace, where every project has 7 to 10 minutes to share what they're about and who they are. So that we have this one artifact, one video that we can have all the people who are participating in this, wanting to know who all the projects are, et cetera, be able to watch. So a highly curated piece. So then we invite them to that. And then from the 15 or 21 that's selected there, we narrow it down to 12 who's going to be part of the next season. And then those 12 can duplicate that process again, and we can have one artifact where it's like an hour-long video max, sharing all 12 projects and who they are. So that could be kind of the process of narrowing it down while also creating artifacts that help share, what's going on here and keep everyone aligned. So that's setting a stage there. What do you all think of that general overview?
That sounds great to me. What about today? What are your feelings for how to approach today?
So for today, I would love to just stay high level, because if we have the group of all 18 of us, we can stay high level, and then within working groups, we can get into the details.
Cool.
So I don't think it's necessarily productive to know, like, should it be 30 seconds or 90 seconds, within this call. Right. Maybe we have that in the working group for people who really want to get into those nuances. So I think today would be really powerful to just keep going over what you see the overall flow looking like, and then give the next steps for projects, which is really relevant for a lot of projects here, for what they might need to provide.
Great.
Does anyone else have any major questions then that they're wanting to get answered in this call in space, so we can make sure that we're touching on those? Okay, well then, Sydney, if you want to keep going with the overall plan that you had, and then pass it back to you.
Okie dokie. So I just went through the evaluation process, but as Reiki explained, and I agree, we should have more time to really have each project share. Honestly, I don't really know where to go from here as far as, keeping it high level. I almost want to just open it up to, I'm kind of at a loss. I don't know how to take it from here today, unless we want to open it up and hear from each project.
I mean, I'll share my thoughts here for a second, if that's okay.
Please,
I mean, I think it makes sense that we all have a process. That process is obviously the application, but then kind of a normal, and I say normal, traditional pitch process that goes on, right? Like, you have X amount of time, there's a pitch, and then there's Q&A right after that pitch from all the other people who are participating in it, whether those people be judges, so to speak, or other community members, or whoever it is, any questions that people might have. So just giving a little bit of space for each and every project to kind of go through, and then narrowing it down, and then kind of going to, some process that happens on set dates. Because right now it seems like, well, we don't have when that pitch date is, we don't have, who's on the call or who's making the decisions. We don't have exactly how much time we should be preparing, or whether or not we need other materials. So I think it's just making decisions of like what that process is and when is it done by. That seems to me to be the next steps, but hey, open to other,
I completely agree. That makes a lot of sense. So I would say next steps, like you just said, just to reiterate, let's decide when those pitches happen. Let's invite people to fill out the Alliance member form so that you can express interest as far as being a member that's supporting with the evaluation process. And then the Q&A, like, I think that's a vital piece, but how do we want to handle, like, right now? How do we want to use this time together?
I've got a couple of questions, and maybe because I watched the recording of the call, I think it must have been last week, and another call about the seasons, and or a video, and I read a bit on the Git book, but there's a sea of information there, and so this might be some obvious questions which I just haven't got to yet. But for example, the Alliance member form, what does that mean? Once you become an Alliance member, what is the level of commitment that we're kind of signing into, as it were? Just because, like, I know that La Chiera really wants to also be a kind of a blueprint for others to copy, and kind of make everything open source. So we, like all of us in this space, we all want all of this to happen as quickly as possible and to share. But I also know that you know, we're all super thinly stretched at the moment, and as much as we want to kind of get involved with lots of different things, I think that might not be really realistic depending on the level of commitment. So what actually are we getting into? I'm still a little bit lost about what is the help that we would get from this, and what is the kind of help that we would, you know, want to give, basically, if that's clear.
Yeah. Reiki, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
I'm happy to take it.
Okay.
And just to reground us, Peter, what I actually invite you to do is watch last week's call if you want to get more involved. The Alliance is being formed right now. We're going through that forming process. So last call was the first one of that, on what the Alliance actually is, how we're coming together, but we're exploring the question of how do we collaborate across organizations. We all know we need to do it. We need to figure out a pattern, and we recognize that a lot of people are stretched thin, and we don't want to try to create a new organization here that's going to take a lot of time. So that's all part of the exploration that we're diving into in those calls. So maybe we can explore it in those spaces where we've already set time for them. So I invite you to watch last week's call and/or attend next week's session to be part of that process.
Yeah, no, I did watch last week's call. Maybe I must have missed that information, but maybe I'll watch it again if I have time. Yeah, right. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I just know that's going right back to the beginning, and I think that'll stall our moving forward at the moment. But yes, there isn't a structure for the Alliance yet. That's part of what's being formed. And then once that structure is formed, it will answer all those questions. But right now it's an emergence still, and we're figuring it out.
I see. Yes.
And maybe what I can then invite us to kind of ground today then is I'd like to just align on the overall process, because that's the high level I think we all need to be aware of and agree to. So I just proposed something, so I took time to write it down real quick, so that any project can apply to be part of that 12. We score the projects, and maybe we select 21. These are arbitrary numbers right now. We can discuss them and share if you feel like you have a better number. And then we have a 90-minute recording, because I think that's the maximum people can really give, that talk about the 21. And then the council, which is all of us that represent all of the projects that are part of this Alliance, we select what 12 we want to work with. So we'll have to come up with a new criteria, but it likely will be with, you know, what is our capacity? Who do we think we could best support? A different lens than this scoring criteria, because some project might come in that we just don't have the capacity to actually support for whatever reason. Anyhow, we pick the 12 that we're going to support, and then those 12 do one recording. So this is what we're asking for projects then, is to apply, come and do a pitch if you're selected to be part of the 21. And then the third one is then you share your project in the one recording. And then we use this recording to then do the crowd pooling campaigns. So this is where we go to then raise funds for all the projects and raise all the other forms of capital that we need. So people can come, they can watch it and be like, oh man, I love that project and this one, I want to go support them. And they can get a good idea of the different projects and who they are. So then the crowd pooling, and then this helps maybe ground what we're doing and where we're going right now. This is what HAPA is building to be able to provide. Let me actually show you the button. Sorry, this is a long deck. There it is. Wow. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway. So this is what HAPA is working on for the crowd pooling, is an ability to be able to show up. Each organization and project can have their own dashboard like this, where they can then raise all the roles they need. So they can have all the roles set up saying, you know, we're a permaculture project, so we need farmers and people to show up and actually plant trees, etc. So they can name all the different roles that the project needs to succeed. Any assets they need, so any land that they need raised, any equipment they need, etc., and any funds. And then have a dashboard just like this where people can come in and either support financially or fill another role, make a request to distribute assets. And then tokens can be issued out to all of these projects. So this is how they can then start and crowdfund their project. So this is kind of the roadmap of where we're at. Hopefully that helps ground it. So we can pick those 12, then go to collectively to help fundraise for them and move on. So I want to know if there's any thoughts, reflections, or anything on the overall process, where we're headed, and what we're trying to do together here. Brandon, I don't want to go back to facilitating, because Sydney, I think you're going to do that. So I'd love it if you keep that hat. If you don't want it, that's totally fine, and then send me a message. But if you'd like to facilitate, then you can call on different people going forward.
Brandon.
All right. So I've got so many questions, but I think we're all in the right area. It's just, we're here to want to choose these 12 types of projects. And I think there's just some criteria that we can lay out. And again, we're just kind of taking from other different organizations that exist. So something that you guys may know that exists back in the States, it's called LEAD, which is Leaders of Environmental and Economic Design. And they've got some really cool scorecards that you can do based on the project. So I think we can kind of use the same type of system as a scorecard for each one of our land-based projects. So if you guys look into there, I uploaded it. It's in the Google Docs. You guys can see that score sheet or what it is for there. And then maybe we can just integrate that for our regenerative scorecard, not necessarily having to use all the LEAD stuff. Also, I had a couple other questions. When we look at doing potential development projects, if you were, some people are submitting new projects that have, that don't have the land, or if they just have the land. I mean, construction can sometimes take up to 2 years to actually get this thing plug and play ready. So if you're going to take in crowdfunding immediately right now, get that funding, then what is like the expected time, turnaround do you expect these projects to be? You got to have that burn cash in a sense. So I think, there's so many different moving parts in these types of projects. That's where we need to kind of understand and then focusing more in of what do we want to look at. So I kind of played around with a little bit of a kind of like creating like a tier system. If you're in like tier 1, you're in the idea phase, the pre-seed funding, getting piecing everything together. Tier 1 would be like you have your land acquired, you have a legal entity. Tier 2 would be more your like 1 to 3 hectares, 1 to 50 houses. And when we start scaling these up to larger regenerative projects, usually in any kind of green zone, you're going to be looking at around 5 to 10% of any kind of residential house build. And that's at least what we have over in Indonesia. So if we want to kind of keep it more of a regenerative green zone, agroforestry zone, then we wouldn't need to scale it. So some of the other large villages I've seen, when I've seen like if we say, hey, tier 5 villages, it's up to like 1,200 homes on, just like a standard size home. And, that could be up towards 80 hectares. So after looking at some of the applications, I saw there's some pretty big projects. I'm like, okay, cool. We could scale these into some potential tier 5 projects because those assets in a sense are already there. But I think, again, it's just kind of narrowing it down in today's session. What do we want from these 12 projects, and then kind of creating that scorecard. So then when we do see these videos, we're like, oh, okay, hey, cool. This kind of fits the alignment of the Regenerative Alliance. So these are just some of the things. And then if we do this is one of the questions I had for you guys, and see if one of you guys can help answer. So if we do this crowdfunding, obviously, there's a community that's going to be crowdfunding these types of projects. And then, what is the purpose in a sense for, let's say that's a community or a pool of investors? Are they seeking for ROI? Are they seeking for ownership? Or are they seeking for just, for a good cause? Is this for charity? I think that's the understanding what we need to be able to give back. Because if you also looked at a lot of these projects too, most of them are also all privately owned. A couple of them, there was a handful of them that were operating cooperatively. But these are just some questions that came to mind. And if any of you guys could answer some of those, that'd be grateful. And yeah, I just figure maybe we can just kind of smooth out this process. That way, when everyone has their pitches, it's pretty clear and like, okay, here's what we're all chiming on the same area. Does that help at all?
So helpful. Yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. Kelly and Joe.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add on to what Brandon was saying as well with the, we have the LEAD, which is great, but also I've been working on the Living Building Challenge certification. So I feel like that's like the top, regenerative development certification that's out there. So obviously, like, it's a lot to get certified, but at least to have those standards in mind as far as like understanding the ecology of place, water, energy, beauty, design, all of these different factors that go into it. See how each project is addressing each of those. Another thing I wanted to share was that our project was originally set for a 1,400 acre piece of land, and we put an offer on there, but a different offer got accepted. So now we're kind of looking for land again. And so just what would help us is knowing that we have fundraising, because if we can do fundraising even before we have the land, we can have that proof of funds, so our offer is more likely to get accepted. So that's just, I wanted to put that in as far as when we're assessing these types of projects. Just because they might not have the land yet doesn't mean that, well, they're not ready for funding, because we have all of our team, all of our financial models built, and know exactly how we're going to use the funds, know how many years it's going to take, know our exact equity waterfalls for our investors, and all of those sorts of things. So I feel like that would be a really important thing for these projects to really understand, is all of their different financial models that are going into this, how the project is going to be sustaining itself ongoing financially with the operations, you know, what kind of revenue it's going to be generating and that sort of thing. And I just wanted to put it out there that I can also help offer those services, since we've already built our financial models, that we could potentially, you know, help other people like put theirs into that financial model as well, in case they, you know, didn't have that yet, but maybe they have the land. So, you know, kind of trading those different aspects. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind sharing any of those resources in that document, that would be great. And you too, Brandon, so we can start aggregating all these resources we'll use to select and evaluate. Thank you. It's super helpful.
Yeah, I saw the regenerative scorecard. That's really well done. I like that one as well. So it's just kind of bringing them all together.
Definitely. Stephen?
Yeah, I had my hand up for two things. One, way back when I think it was Joseph was talking, or Peter was talking, to put everything in context. And I think, I'm assuming that the Regen Civics group is going to eventually have its own DAO, and is eventually going to be integrated with the whole seeds community and part of the commons and so forth down the road. And I think that integration is really important. Right now, this is sort of occurring within this group, but it's still occurring also within the wider seeds environment. And there's a lot of history and integration there as well. And I just wanted to let Peter know that all those things are part of this conversation. The other thing is, I was going to discuss the evaluation criteria that we're bringing together for selection of the 12 village projects. And of course, there are village projects that already have received seeds in the past, including Vilcabamba. So whatever criteria are selected, to me, one of them should be what is the local community's acceptance and buy-in. And so, for example, Vilcabamba, there's a huge, I mean, there's 5,000 people in that village. Most of them are firmly behind the continuation of this project. And we went down and interviewed, there were 62 people lined up to be interviewed in support of this project. And we interviewed 36 of them, more than an hour, and transcribed all the interviews. Susan and Walter have done an amazing job getting their community behind them over the last 15 years for Sacred Farm. So I think when you set up criteria, the support of the local community for the project has got to be one of the prime criteria that you look at, however you measure that. So that's what I wanted to add.
Awesome point. Thank you. Reiki?
I'm curious to riff on something Stephen just said about buy-in and seeds and community from that perspective. In a previous call, you said, Reiki, you said that this alliance isn't dogmatic and doesn't want to say that seeds is a requirement, like that the villages have to accept seeds as one of the currencies. That was my proposal, and it feels like that's kind of what Stephen's saying. Do we want these projects that are getting the support from HAPA's DHO to opt into the currency that HAPA built and want to see adoption for? I think if anyone that says yes to that would get a priority vote for me. personally, and I just want to speak it out and see where we stand as a group on that topic.
My desire and wish is that we don't do that with any tool, and we just look at tools as tools so that we are being more expansive. However, I think through the process of selecting, we can all make that decision internally, and maybe we can choose internally to select projects that use, the particular tools that you want to favor. But I think that needs to come out in the governance process when we're just selecting it. And I don't think we need to have a hard, fast criteria on very much. Otherwise, we're going to try to over-engineer this, and it's just going to be a mess. So I'd rather it be simplified, and there's a lot of opinions here. So here's what I've put down, and this is in editing mode right now for us to tweak, is what are we looking for to keep it something really simple like this, and to iterate on what are we looking for just a little bit more. And I'd like to do that now with you all, and then we can align on the process. But so this is what we currently have for what are we looking for, a high score on the Regenerative Civics scorecard, because that's how you're going to be part of the top 21 anyway, is based off this kind of objective / hyper intersubjective methodology for picking projects. So that's kind of step one. And we iterate on that here, which I'm super in support of. I think that's great. Next up is what I was mentioning, and we can of course discuss this, is a diversity in the project selection to optimize for learning. So if we're here to learn and experiment and try to figure this all out together, we want to have some diversity so we can learn more effectively. And then I think this was also brought up on the call here, is to ensure that they have a cooperative and equitable value and power distribution model. So maybe that does mean they're using a HAPA DAO, which provides that as a default. But maybe they're using some other tool, maybe they're using a co-op, whatever. We just say it needs to be cooperatively owned and governed, because you can't have, land being privately owned by one member or anything like that, because projects are just going to fail. So I've seen that as some of the high level things that maybe we can agree on. And that's kind of where I'd love to stay in this space, and maybe try to avoid the highly opinionated things that I don't think we actually need to go through the really long process of trying to get to the same opinion on all that. So anyway, that's me setting this context here, and I'd love
I think there's so many layers of complication in that, and what I just want to address in this is, look, I'm going in my 10th year of running a cooperative farm, but that the land is privately owned in some capacity, and here's why. The way that legal structures work in different areas that large swaths of land can't be subdivided into smaller pieces of land based on farming land, or a million and one reasons as to why there's resiliency in also having kind of centrality sometimes, and decentralized governance, and decision-making can happen sometimes in a DAO-like format, but sometimes the legal structure has happened it's all happening in a corporation, or it's all happening in a farming business, or whatever it is. There are reasons for why that also works, to getting permits and doing a bunch of other stuff. And it's just really difficult to say that there's only one way to do it, specifically when we're talking about projects all over the world that have completely different legal realities essentially involved. But I think I like the idea of what you're saying. I love the idea of it. I just think we have to be when we're deciding, and this is the value of deciding as a group, is that we're deciding based on the kind of elements of it's almost like the color of the rules, not just the rules itself. Does that make sense? What's the reason for the rule, or what's the reason for the law in particular scenarios? And are we maintaining the truth of that, right? Is this maintaining the essence of what we were trying to express or bring forward or fund or participate in or support in some capacity? Just a thought.
If I can rip back on that thought, and to get really practical here, one of the ideas with projects is that each project would launch a token, and that token represents a share of ownership of all the project's assets. That's not possible if one individual actually owns the land, and then a group of people come in and build an event center on that land, and then the owner's actually I want to take this all back, and rugs the whole project. So there's that practical reality that it needs to be cooperatively owned, or there needs to be a legal entity that says we own this, and we have a literal securities shares that are just recognized as tokens. We can set up a Wyoming DAO LLC for the US to do this. They've set up trusts now in Europe to be able to do it. And I know of some going on in Central and South America, figuring out structures there. I forget what they're called. But either way, for a large part of the world right now, we're having legal containers that can be set up. So I also realized that the legacy systems, there was a lot of justification for, concentrated power and wealth, because the tooling for decentralizing that didn't exist yet, which is why a lot of projects have failed too, because there's even that internal mind. This happened with me throughout all the intentional communities I was involved in the last decade, is I get there and I have this reservation for really contributing to the project because I don't own it. It's not going to, it's not in reciprocity. The value is not going to be reciprocated. I feel like I'm being exploited, and the reality is you were being exploited. You could add a lot of value to a project, but then you leave and you've just paid a bunch of money and spent a bunch of time. So the structures for equitably distributing value didn't exist. So I think that is something worth exploring and being maybe clear on in this particular alliance, is those structures need to be there. Otherwise, there's nothing to collectively invest into. If the land, again, is privately owned by somebody else, the tokens aren't worth anything. They're backed by nothing. So anyway, that's, I think, the general feeling and pattern. And I see you nodding a bunch, so I don't know if the way I described that then captured that, if or not. There. Anyway, so it's an opinion. I would love to actually align on that, because that is foundational to what we're doing here and how we can structure the crowd pooling going forward. Is if we get to say these tokens are asset backed, they're backed by land and the progress the communities are making, and maybe we just actually make them proper securities and go through the registration process, and we can.
So
Great.
can I
That's
speak
one
into
route
that
of doing
for a
it.
sec?
So I'll pause there. Yeah.
Yeah, Raiki, I just want to say that a lot of
William?
communities. Oh, see, do you want to stop me? Or
No,
can I
it's just
speak?
Kirill had his hand up. I don't know if you're on your phone and could see.
Okay, yeah, no, I couldn't see. I'll be quiet and wait my turn.
I'll call on you right after him. Thanks.
Thank you. No, these are excellent points, and this is kind of the foundational issue. I think they're pathways. We've been looking at this for a very long time. For Lala and for a number of other projects, they are actually looking to become living trusts where the land has agency and there are stewards who are specifically empowered to be the representatives of land. That feels to me like one of the end points, but we might not be able to get there all in one step. It might be that where there is fractionalized ownership in, say, an LLC, the LLC has ownership of the land, and that can give that kind of access. But I do also want to honor on the other side of it that what we're doing is we're balancing the needs of the land stewards, which might represent as one owner or a handful of owners, and then the labor that's coming in to do the regenerative work. And typically it's a zero sum. One loses or the other loses. It would be new to really create something that step by step, methodically make sure that all contributions are honored. And that can even be including, like, people get a piece of the LLC and the LLC sponsors someone who's put in a number of years of work for them to own their own land if we're still using the old system. But just keep it in mind that they're pathways, and it might occur in like staccato stages, not all in one go.
Thank you. William?
Thank you. So I just want to present an alternative legal structure for projects that join this alliance, and it's the spiritual ministry. It's separation from state. They recognize 3 jurisdictions: state, ministry, and church. So as a ministry, we can buy and acquire assets and hold them within our own jurisdiction. And then internally as a community, we can reflect all of that ownership and rights on blockchain without any regulation. So there is an existing framework, and I want to offer it to this alliance and also support with education, as it is a new system. But it is here, it exists, and yeah, I would like to raise awareness of it as a potential pathway for any of these projects that are looking for alternative structures to when it comes to actually buying and holding the asset and the land. Because connecting it to a token this way avoids SEC regulation and many other things. It's also tax exempt. So thank you for giving me the space to share that.
Thank you, William. I think it's starting to become clear who's going to be in the council and which areas they're going to support. So that's really exciting. Marcus?
Hey everyone, Marcus from Pogear here. So yeah, just to share perhaps another perspective on tokenization and legal structure. So we're working with a Delaware C Corp, through which the shares are essentially tokenized through our tokenizing partner, which fully SEC compliant, and there is no risk of the SEC retroactively coming back, given that they're a precedent-based institution, coming back and saying like, this was permissible at one point, now it's not. So yeah, just if we're looking to explore like a fully compliant route, definitely happy to share insights and learnings from Pogear.
Thanks so much. Joel?
Thank you. I guess I'll just echo the last three comments, which was, I guess, in my pipeline of thoughts. That if the evolution of the alliance and the group is to move into this direction, looking at jurisdictions of air, land, water, digital assets, trusts, land trusts, and stewardship, I think that'd feel good to me. And there might be projects that don't know or don't have a path there yet based on their jurisdiction. But I think this is a core fundamental potential opportunity, but really a way forward for land-based projects to take jurisdiction over their land, use the jurisdiction of the air to moderate their rights, to use the jurisdiction of the water to engage in commercial activities. And the way that DAOs and DHOs can be set up with legal structures and lands with trusts and where that might be can all be different. It is different around the world, but it is also very similar because there is an international code for land, air, and water that all of these different structures can operate under. And there's many different ways to do it. They are similar to what a lot of us might be familiar with in terms of maybe traditional investment funds and building land trusts and acquiring land and assets and maybe moving them in a digital asset. And how do we protect that from SEC regulation? And how do we find tax exemption within religious organizations, which are in the jurisdiction of the air and fully protected under natural rights? Same with land, as long as it's a real asset property, it could be held in digital trust with shares represented as coins or tokens. And then in terms of creating financial inputs and outputs into a governance model, for example, raising traditional funds, asking for traditional investors, asking for the crypto markets to put into some sort of DAO or DHO, we move into a different jurisdiction. So I would just echo the last three comments as the most succinct version of there is a path forward. I feel some projects might need to have a centralized hub of activity or jurisdiction, more or less. But I would propose that it would be a short-term goal, that these centralized structures are used as a stepping stone if and when necessary, and that we explore our jurisdictional opportunities anywhere on the footprint of the land, anywhere in the world in these newer open governance ways, but with cooperatively, privately owned stewarded land, meaning that real assets like land can't be taken away because of an investment or an economic thrust.
Powerful considerations. Thank you, Joel. John?
Yeah, I don't know quite how to handle this because, any scoring system might end up with a lot of the same kinds of projects. And I think it's important that among the 12, there be enough diversity of the stages at which projects are operating and the kind of help that they need. Because one of the things that we're trying to do is put together something that is a pattern or a set of tools or an advising process that would be helpful for setting up lots of communities around the world and getting them into this mode. So for example, if one of the criteria were to have a token that was part of the project itself, Vilcabamba wouldn't qualify, partly because we don't have the expertise to tokenize. We wouldn't even know where to start in tokenizing ownership. But we are part of the effort to tokenize the economy in Vilcabamba as seeds, a part of the seeds family. So it seems to me that we need to have a wide range of different levels to support, to find out what will be the best ways to support lots of communities coming into existence this way.
Definitely. Since I see no other hands up, the next steps that I'm sensing right now, and I started actually typing them out in the document that's entitled Evaluation Process, is to define the Council of Alliance members who will take part in this evaluation and voting process, define what's considered when scoring these projects, aggregating all those resources and ideas that were shared today, defining those who will actually champion or focalize and steward the different areas where we're offering to provide support, from governance to fundraising to in-person support this summer, and then scheduling the dates for the pitches and the Q&A and the scoring. Is there anything that I'm missing as far as next steps or any other questions? Okay.
I've got a question on if we are on the council and what that looks like as far as, say, if we want our own project to be reviewed, and what that process would look like.
Yeah, so we have a form for projects right now, and we have a form for those who want to support with the Alliance, whether or not their project is selected. And that form provides an opportunity to share how exactly you want to support, whether it's your own experience with a certain aspect of what we're offering to provide support with, whether you have an entity or a resource. So if you fill out that Alliance form, that's your way of expressing that you want to support the projects in cohort 1. Does that answer the question?
Not necessarily. My question was like, what if, like, is presumably a lot of the people here on this call want to be considered for cohort 1?
Right.
And so, you know, if were we to form a council from the people here as well, like, how do we deal with that potential conflict of interest through the sort of selection of these different projects?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure if people with a project should vote for their project or not. And there might be a case where someone wants to support with the Alliance and their project is not selected. But again, I think that that's okay, because we're going to make everything that we're doing here open source and easy to follow and witness. Kirill, did you want to add something?
Yeah, one thing I would say, it's highly probable, even if someone's project is not selected, just that we have one is going to give us a lens of experience and insight that will definitely be cross-contextual to other. So I could definitely see the value of that. And then you can always come in the next cohort.
Absolutely. Yes, Stephen?
Yeah, quick question. Who actually can vote on that selection of the villages?
Yeah, so like I expressed in the beginning, I think those who have context and who are familiar with RCA, who have read the documentation, showed up to the calls, participating in the Discord as examples, and those who have taken the time to fill out that form and share exactly how they want to support, I would say that's the council. And then we'll have different rings of involvement. Probably the council members will all take part in the evaluation process and the voting, and then the rings of involvement will organically evolve depending on who wants to support with what. I posted in the chat the different areas that we've discussed supporting with up until this point, including, you know, the physical stuff like regeneration and conservation, construction, and then some of the stuff that's more systems based, like DAO setup and consulting, different legal structures, how we're fundraising. So I think those rings are going to start to flush themselves out, and then we'll schedule meetings based on everyone's availability and time zones to try to have groups that are working on each of those different buckets to provide support.
If I can just add to that, Sid. First of all, can I add?
You totally can. Kirill has his hand up, but he just spoke, so you go.
Sorry, I can't. I'm not seeing it. The hand.
That's okay.
Sorry. Yes to everything you said. And first of all, I guess, do you want to be a part of the Alliance? Make yourself known. And then Reiki suggested that we start with a vote, so he would vote yes. So that person being in, then that they would get their vote, and it would follow a process of voting everyone in officially at some point. So yes to meeting all the criteria that Sid just said. Make yourself known that you want to be a part of the Alliance, and then we can do a vote and vote everyone in.
So at this point right now, we have a document of all the resources, links, etc. Please feel free to add more, especially resources that will support the evaluation process. Oh, Neil. Oh, sorry, it's a private message. Wiki. We're going to move all of the submissions of the projects to a wiki so that it's way easier to read through instead of looking at Excel. So I'll share that with you guys soon. Thanks, Neil. And yeah, and then we just need to do some scheduling for the pitches and the Q&As and the actual scoring, forming the council. So I know some of you here are in Bali or in a part of the world where this is not a convenient time at all. So I think it would be helpful if maybe we posted in the Discord the different groups and areas of support that we're offering, so you guys can share, you know, your time zone, what your availability is if you haven't done so already in the forms. And then we'll start putting some meetings on the book. And of course we can update and reschedule to make sure that most people can join, but at least we'll start to like meet in groups based on each of our areas of interest and where our experience is and what we have to offer. How does that feel? Good. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone. It's been a lot lately, but I'm so grateful to be doing this with you all. And feel free to unmute and say anything. It's our last minute.
Yes, superstar, blowing love and light and happiness and joy at you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gratitude.
Thank you, Sid.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Good to see
Thanks,
everyone.
Sid. Thank you, everybody. Good to see
Much
you.
appreciation.
Good.
Gratitude. Stay well.
Peace, love, and harmony.
Thanks.
Mwah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sid. Great job.
Much love.
Grail never saw my message about the SDG Impact Fund.
Call with Will in 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe Reiki's wife's water is breaking or she has contractions.
Really?
Yeah, did you see that in the chat? This is still,
Oh, wow.
yeah.